For those of you who'd like access to this content, follow the link in the description box, visit our Patreon page, and subscribe to the Black Kluge tier. For a mere $5 a month, you get access to the alternate Sunday episodes you've been missing, only available on Patreon, as well as the weekly Tuesday episodes. But wait, there's more. If you subscribe to the Black Kluge tier, you'll also get 2 weeks advance notice to our Thursday sessions. And if you needed any more incentive, when we have bonus episodes, Patreon is the place where you're going to find them. Also, don't forget to check out Teepublic for our great swag. The link is also in the aforementioned description.
No way. Howard, you're not dumb. You went to BU. You're a smart man.
BU.
There's your credentials.
They made all the geniuses into BU. You know that I went to BU, but I went to retard BU? Like I didn't even go to the real BU.
It wasn't even the real college?
Yeah, there's a college at Boston University for idiots. It's to milk parents who can't normally get their kids into the school. You know, I was a real idiot. Oh. And BU has a program called, it's like the Special Olympics. It was called Basic Studies. It doesn't get embarrassing than that. Like when you're trying to pick up a chick at BU and you tell her you're in Basic Studies, you're like, fucking loser.
Yeah.
They head for the hills. You think it was easy to get laid with this face and being in Basic Studies? And Basic Studies, the deal was, even though you're a shit student, you can't even score above 1,000 on your SATs, we're going to let you into BU, let your old man pay the freight, and you got to, for 2 years, take everything you were supposed to take in high school, but you fucked up.
So you're really in high school?
I'm in high school. I was in high school for 2 more years. Believe me, this was no college. I was studying, like, high school chemistry, humanities, which was actually watching movies. And it was like retard school. And then if you passed retard school, they'd let you for the next 2 years get into, like the School of Communications, where I'd study radio. I'd study fucking radio. What's the study of radio? There wasn't one professor that
you
ever
weren't
think about.
making radios.
No, if we made radios, it would have made sense. Study radio. I'm sure my old man was having a conniption. It cost him like $5 grand a year at the time, which was a lot of money for my father.
You wanted to do the Howard Stern Radio Network, which I think is a fantastic idea, but I know it has to be a tremendous undertaking. And what I was thinking...
It's not that tremendous. I can make it happen.
Well,
I'm in the middle of doing it.
With so many people now having these digital dishes and also the big satellite dishes, which we have, why couldn't you get on sort of like a pay...
Because you're missing the point. Radio...
Confused about what we do.
Yeah, radio is primarily listened to in cars. Unless you get a satellite dish on your car.
We're not going on cable radio.
Yeah, we don't want to take our step back. When I was in college, we had cable radio. They would only broadcast it into the dormitories over the phone lines. I'm not looking to take a step back. I'm a broadcaster.
Yeah, but at least that way people that are all over the country, like us who tape the show every day, would have the option.
I don't care. I don't care. I'm not looking to do a paid radio show. That's going to be the saddest day of my career when I'm going to do a paid radio show. I'd rather quit.
So 80 and 100 million a year go into your corporation. You go on Sirius, the satellite radio channel, okay? How are they going to make a profit? I mean, how many people you think are going to go over and what are they, like $50 for that thing, subscription?
Is it my problem if they make a profit?
No.
Is that my worry?
No.
Welcome, folks, to QF, a podcast about Howard Stern. I'm your host, Fillmore, a.k.a. Jim Fix, and I'm proud to present, for this particular episode, the man, the myth, the mouth, the mind, Mr. Billy West. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Hey, thanks, Jim. How are you?
Not too bad. I've got a bunch of questions for you, and we're going to kind of warp time a little bit. First of all, thanks for allowing us to interview you, because you keep yourself way busier than a lot of people your age, and your interactions with your fans are almost everything I can see is almost so positive. Has it always been that way for you, doing the cons and doing appearances and stuff? Have you always felt like this is great, this is good fun?
Let's see. I was the first voiceover to ever do these Comic-Cons. I did them when there was only 3 of them in the world.
Yeah.
Back about 18 years ago or so, maybe 19. And anyway, there was 3 of them. One was in Atlanta, one was in San Diego, and then there was one in Chicago, I think. And they didn't see what do we need with a voice guy? What do we need with a cartoon voice guy? And, and then they began to see that it was people like me that were becoming staples, of that industry. And, we would get the lines and, some of the actors, they were bringing in actors from like the 70s and And a lot of them were getting really old, but they thought, oh, we get famous people here. Yeah, they were famous about 45 years ago.
Well, it's still it's a get because for a lot of fans, especially, they have so many questions that are never answered because the big names you expect, the Shatners or the whoever, the Mark Hamills, they might get the both of whom ironically do plenty of voice work themselves, and that's part of a later question that I've got. I think with the bigger stars at the conventions, the fans would get less information from them than they wanted. And that's why you're going to always get a better story from, let's say, Michael Ironside instead of Tom Cruise, if you're asking him Top Gun questions. You might get more from James Doohan than from William Shatner, and someone who's going to be a little more honest about their experience and see it from a way better and more, I guess, fan-based perspective. But was there any bleed in terms of these cons back in the day? Was it always like how they would have, there's comic cons, there's anime cons, there's horror cons and stuff. Was there a greater mix of genres and talent back then, or has it become more streamlined?
It's totally become more streamlined. Like I said, there's got to be at least 600 of them now in the world.
Crazy.
They've got them in. I was invited to Dubai.
Yeah. Wow.
And and they were very, very nice. They were like, we love what you do, and we hear you for so many years, and everybody knows what you do. And I wanted to say, yeah, that's all well and good, but I kind of don't like your human rights record with women.
That reminds me of a Robin Williams story. He had been booked to play, this probably mid-'80s or early 80s, before, World According to Garp and all of his big, after Mork and Mindy, however. And he went on their version of The Tonight Show, I suppose. And they just asked him outright, it's amazing. There's so many stand-ups, so many stand-up comedians, famous Americans. Explain why Germany has no stand-up comics such as you. And he just sort of mumbles a little and he says, possibly because you killed them all.
Wow.
And then they went to commercial and he was gone.
Yeah, he was gone.
Yeah.
I would have. Their version of the Tonight Show would be the 6,000 year ago show.
Well, they've got now, as you said, 600. If it's over 600 conventions in the United States, I can only imagine that they now exist in countries you'd never think so. How many trips abroad have you taken? Because I know there's a video of you and John DiMaggio from playing in front of a show in I think Melbourne. So what countries have this taken you to?
We did all the cities, me and John, and then some others that were part of the roster at that time. And we did all those, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, you name it. And it was just nothing but fun. I have so much fun doing them, and I really enjoy doing them and meeting people. But I was going to say about Dubai, they were so nice. They were like, we will treat you like royalty, and then what if I inadvertently break Sharia law, and all this, it's like I look at somebody the wrong way, or I burp at a table or something, and next thing you know, you're out in the desert with a black velvet hood over your head. Yes, like we said, we love you very much, but you broke Sharia law, and that is not acceptable here. And then what?
Oh yeah. It's scary when you don't know certain things. Like Doug Stanhope had to be quietly escorted out of Thailand because he insulted the king, which is a major, major crime.
Well, we've all done that.
Well, the one of the questions, a lot of them came from the fans, and one of them from one of our big super fans, G Chup. He asked, "What were your favorite cartoons growing up as a kid?"
Let's see. I was enamored with the Warner Brothers cartoons, except back then, like I'm talking about the late 50s, we used to get a channel from Canada, CKLW, Channel 9 from Windsor. And they had the rights to show Warner Brothers cartoons, but back in those days, they were showing films, of films, and every time they re-recorded the thing, it would lose another generation. So eventually you were just watching protons, or pixels.
Yeah.
And you could, but I could hear the voices though. That it didn't matter to me what was going on.
Yeah.
As long as I could hear the voices, and that was my escape, because I had a very violent and inhumane, drunken, psychotic father, and I was the whipping boy. And when he wasn't busy kicking my ass, my escape route was to plunk down in front of the TV and try to find things that interested me. And what I found was that I gravitated towards cartoons and the people who did those voices, and I felt like I had allies inside that box, inside that metal and glass wooden box in the living room. And to me it was like magic, because I felt like people that I needed to be close to were in there, and there was just no way to get in.
If I correct me if I'm wrong, but you did have siblings, or you do have at least one more sibling that's still with us. But was there a massive age gap between you?
I was let's see, I was about 6 or 7 when my first brother was born. And then I'm 10 years older than the baby.
Okay.
So there was 3 of us, and the middle brother, he had the same kind of problems that we all inherited, which was alcohol and drug, and my middle brother could not get through it. He he just had a hard time with it.
Oh, my sympathies. May his memory be eternal.
Oh, thanks.
Well, his but that implies that basically for a while there you had no support in this situation. So it's interesting you say that the voices comforted you, but you had something. In that case, you share a little bit of that explains a lot more about the arc of your career, because Kevin Smith, not to say that he's a voice actor, but when he worked at a video store, he would hear the dialogue being played on the films in the store, but not see them. Hence why his films are so talky, as opposed to Quentin Tarantino, who also worked at a video store, but actually watched the films as well.
That's really interesting. You're one way or another, you're a product of your environment, whether it's nature or nurture. I was very, very lucky when I was about 5 years old. Sid Caesar, the comedian Sid Caesar, who was the biggest thing in television in, say, 1958 or 57. And my mom let me stay up and watch your show of shows, and I was molecularly disassembled in front of and sitting next to her watching this man on television. It just blew my ever-loving mind, and it was one of the first televised images I ever saw. And I wanted to cry. I was happy. The Japanese, I don't know what the word is, but the Japanese have a word called happy sad, but I don't know what the word itself is, but what it means is that you get tears in your eyes because you can't believe how beautiful something is. And I looked at this guy and I said, how can someone this beautiful exist? These people, Howard Morris and Carl Reiner and Imogene Coca, they were like gods to me. And they were so funny. And what I did get were the antics, not as much as the dialogue. But the antics included Sid Caesar speaking fake foreign languages.
Right.
And ripping through them, and it sounds exactly like when you're listening to an Italian guy talking or yelling, or a Norwegian or a German or...
Yeah, he was brilliant. The entire cast was brilliant, actually, and it's they were the only reason I was exposed was because Canada had such a diffuse, like they had such a varied collection of channels that they needed content. They got it from anywhere. So we got British shows, we've got Canadian, obviously Canadian content laws, and of course the big 3 networks. So and then lots of reruns and lots of syndication over the years. So and then we got that sweet spot where your show of shows was actually syndicated for a while up in Canada. Wow. I did see them. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's the stuff that that I cut my teeth on, and then after that it was Jonathan Winters.
Yeah, brilliant.
And after that, it was Danny Kaye. They were like everybody else that I loved from another planet. They were just from they were otherworldly, but I loved them and I felt close to them. I just, I was really lucky that I got to see the stuff that I did because there was only 3 channels and
Yep.
it was black and white, and you barely got the public television station, PBS. You barely could get it. But when I was watching CKLW Channel 9, I watched this puppet show called Supercar.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was Super Marionation. It was Jerry and Sylvia Anderson.
Okay.
And it was a very early thing they did. I think it was 61 or 62.
Mm-hmm.
And that stuff blew my mind. This futuristic car that could fly or go under the sea, and it was a puppet show.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just beautiful. And all that junk shaped my imagination, and I would sneak out with my little 25-cent allowance and go see George Pal movies at the theater, the local theater. Go see Atlantis, the Lost Continent, or The Time Machine.
Mm-hmm.
That's the stuff that stayed with me my entire life. Yeah.
And clearly the maybe instilled in you the idea that it's okay to be silly, even as an adult. It doesn't matter.
Well, I never actually had. I was never given signals or verbally or otherwise that it was okay to do anything. It was.
Yeah.
My father was draconian, and he was silly, but he was also a drunk and a crazy, and it was like with me and him, I could do stuff because I was on the autism spectrum. I couldn't get my mind around how to tie a necktie or my shoes or figured shit out. But asked me to do, sirens and flying saucers and little kids and, dialogue from movies and TV shows. Yes, no problem. And and then it became like the Salieri Mozart thing between me and him.
Yes. Well, you grew up. You were born in Michigan, if I unless I missed my guess, and then but then grew up in Boston.
Yes.
But I read that you dropped out of Berkeley School of Music after a semester. What was the impetus? Because it's such a prestigious school of music, and to get in, first of all, there's a lot of people hang their hat on Berkeley and become, studio musicians, not just studio session players, but really famous in their own right.
It was a school, but it was not an accredited college. But I did have to test to get in, and I did have to, go through all the protocol. I went there. I had a hard time reading music. I just couldn't. But the guy that I had for, I learned all kinds of stuff. Like they were composition classes and ensemble performance classes, and you had to learn to read. And I had this guy, Bill Simzak, who was teaching me the guitar. And this is in 1970. I could already play. I had started playing in 61. But the thing is I had an ear that would blow people away. I could figure out chord solos that, he would say, "So what are you working on yourself?" After we played Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in 4/4 time, and I would play a version of David Rose's The Stripper, and he would go, "How do you?" He was like dumbfounded. He was like, "You don't know anything about music, yet you can play this." And I said, "I just figured it out."
Yeah.
So I left, because I wanted to be playing music. I was in bands, and
one of which was it's available on YouTube. I'm not sure how, but there's a clip of your band, the Shutdowns, from the early '80s.
Oh, yeah.
That's especially impressive for the harmonies alone. Besides the obvious nods to the British invasion and the Beach Boys and what type of music floated your boat back then and now, for that matter?
When I was growing up, I loved the pop music of the time, and it was something that everybody loved. Everybody back then was on the same page.
Yeah.
There wasn't 4 or 5 or 10 top 40s. It was like we all listened to the same stuff. One minute you'd hear Sinatra, and the next minute you'd hear Bill Haley, and then the next minute you'd hear Rosemary Clooney. And then you'd hear R&B, black artists. It was just a really rich collection daily, and this was when radio was still beautiful. And then it got wrecked later on by the myopic program directors and niggling little general managers and scared of their own shadow, these ninnies, But I wound up going into radio. But the music that I liked was, I listened to Mantovani because that's what we had in our house.
Yeah.
We had Acker Bilk, and we, Stranger on the Shore, and we had, Gogi Grant. A lot of this, really white music. But I loved, my first single that I ever got was Tennessee Waltz by Sam Cooke.
Okay.
And I loved the way he sang. I loved that the black artist to me, in my little head, colored outside the lines.
Yeah.
They seemed to be fearless, and the white people sounded like they had a board up their ass. Even though they were good, they were good, and a lot of them were superlative. Like there's nothing that could compare to Roy Orbison or Frankie Lane. All this stuff went in the blender, and I had no prejudices about music. There's so many music snobs around today. I felt lucky to be listening to anything, to tell you the truth. Yeah.
Fair enough. Boston then, and I mean, eventually it started becoming known as a bed of comedy, and so many amazing stand-ups came out of the Boston scene. If I started listing them, we won't have time to go through all the people. But with your ability to do impressions and to mimic so well, I'm actually amazed you didn't go into stand-up. Am I wrong? Did you ever attempt doing stand-up?
Yes. They took away my spandex license in 1978, and I said, Jesus, what am I going to do? It's like, that's a young man's game. You get, in my mind, I was going to be king of the world by 23, with a blazing guitar on. And I loved how cool I looked with the thing strapped on, and I'd stare in the mirror and I had all this puffed up, what do you call it? Shag haircut, the whole works. And, when that was done and I was out of a band, excuse me, I didn't know what the hell to do, and I was despondent, and I had already been drinking very heavily by that time. And I remember I got drafted in 1970. Nixon. There was a draft lottery, and I came in. I was number 40 or something, and I had to go take the physical, and I was going to go to Vietnam if this, proceeded. And but I had the flattest feet they ever saw and high blood pressure, so I was disqualified. They wouldn't let me in. But then nothing was happening. I couldn't find a job. I was living at my mom's. I was just drinking all day and into the night. And then I woke up one morning and I said, what the fuck am I going to do? And I was so bored, I went down and tried to join the Navy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
after being booted from the Army. But anyway, no, of course they weren't going to take me, but I don't know what I was thinking. I was like, I had rudder trouble. I was lost in space. I didn't know who or what I was. I hadn't quite discovered my superpowers yet, even though I could be that way since I was 8 years old. But I used to hide it like an appendix scar because no one seemed to give a damn about it. And and even my own friends, I'd sit in the house and I'd figure out something really cool and I'd go show them and they'd stand there looking at me,
Well, I remember Mel Blanc talking about how when he tried to get a job, it was, we have too many voice actors already. We don't need you, that kind of thing. And these people not knowing. It's like I think EMI turning down the Who because we don't we can't use you. And then eventually got in, and then it was evident what he could do. In that situation, was that one moment. Was that more or less the time that you got involved with Charles Lacadera?
Yes. The thing about the draft I wanted to say was many years later, I was working on Futurama and they asked me to do Nixon And the Nixon thing that I do is not, it doesn't sound anything like Nixon. It's a distortion. It's a bastardization,
Right.
exaggeration. But the writers came to me one day and they said, why do you, when you're doing Nixon, why do you do that like werewolf kind of noise afterwards? And I said, you don't like it? And they said, no, we love it. We just don't know why you do it. And I
Okay.
said, and I told them that when I was 10 years old, the debate between John F. Kennedy and Richard M. Nixon was the first televised presidential debate.
Mm-hmm.
And Kennedy looked like a game show host. He had this beautiful buttered toast hair, and he looked like a matinee idol, and he was in soft focus. And then they cut to Nixon, and they were doing Kennedy's people had the camera people do extreme close-ups of him, stark black and white, and the hair and the pores of his nose, you could see it growing, and his 5 o'clock shadow was coming in at 1:15, and he was mumbling, I want to be president of the United States. And I said to my mom, he looks like he's going to turn into a werewolf. So I thought about it, when I was a kid, I was like, imagine if he did, I want to be president of the United States because. Don't let me out. No matter what you hear, keep the door locked. And so that's how that came about. I know I'm jumping way ahead, but
No worries.
but
No.
to this very day in the Nixon library is a continuous loop playing of every Nixon thing that I did on Futurama. So I win. I won.
Well, perfect. Better
I won.
It's the least he deserves after the Christmas bombing of Cambodia, and having visited the country and seeing what the lasting effects were. It's actually shocking he wasn't tried on war crimes, because there's still kids, 9-year-old kids that had nothing to do with that war, still maimed from mines that haven't been cleared over the years.
I know.
It's terrible. Getting back to Jonathan Winters, for example, because I was a massive fan of Jonathan Winters. Anytime he was on the Tonight Show, guest appearances somewhere, it was, it's a mad world. Anything, if I could take it in, I would. Yeah. But also Frank Gorshin, I loved his Burt Lancaster was just mind-blowingly good. And then thankfully someone who's still. I think so. And then someone who's still with us, thankfully, Martin Short, listening to him do Katharine Hepburn, or I don't know, after he did Robin Williams, I couldn't take Robin Williams seriously as a comedian anymore. I preferred his drama.
Right. I know, because it's like, why do they call it rush hour when nothing moves?
Well, it became shtick. But can you name some impressions over the years
40 seconds have gone by and I haven't used every word in the English language, bro.
Can you name some impressions over the years that were done by others that astounded you with how good they were done?
Let's see. I thought that Will Jordan was really incredible. Will Jordan was from the 50s, and he did the Ed Sullivan Show, and he did an impression of Ed Sullivan, which became monumental among, the comedy cognoscenti of the time, which wasn't a whole lot of people, but they loved him, and they loved to see the Ed Sullivan impression. And Sullivan ditched his ego because he saw the audience reacting so well to it. I loved, Frank Gorshin, loved him. The Riddler character. It was based on Richard Widmark's Tommy Udo, the giggling psycho.
Mm-hmm.
I forget which movie it was, where he kicked the wheelchair with the old lady, and he kicked her down the stairs and was giggling and
Great inspiration.
Oh yeah, I know. I worked with him. We had him on Ren and Stimpy.
You're kidding. Oh, well, he was still. He was still doing late night appearances. I remember one from maybe '97. He was on Conan, and he was still hadn't lost a step.
No, and we had him on Ren and Stimpy, and he did just really funny things, and they just were rolling tape, of course. But I also got to work with Jonathan Winters and Sid Caesar, my two idols.
That's what I was going to ask about as well. I mean, and I know Sid got near the end of his life. It was sad. He sort of lost his faculties a little, and he, same as Tim Conway, I believe. I don't think there was any evidence of it, but poor Tim met a sad end. But Jonathan Winters, up until the end, was still hysterically funny. There's an episode of The Green Room with him and Robert Klein, and I can't remember who else, but he was so fast and so quick.
Oh, I know. He was. I got to know him, and we were up at his house in Montecito, and we were filming Comic Book the movie. It was a mockumentary that Mark Hamill did, and I was in it. A lot of the voice guys were in it, and we so we hung out. Jonathan Winters was in it. We pulled him in, and Sid Caesar. So at Jonathan Winters' house, I was there, playing with Sid Caesar and Jonathan himself in his living room, and I'm interacting with my two Titanic heroes. They were Titans. They were I don't know. I was like it was that moment that David Byrne, and you may find yourself ad-libbing with Jonathan Winters. My God, how do I work this? And the same with Sid Caesar and. Jonathan Winters gave us a little tour of his house, and he had hat racks everywhere you looked, and on them was different hats. An admiral's cap, a sailor's hat, a German war helmet, a feather, a tri-cornered hat, and he would just stop and put one on.
Yes.
And just go into, and it happened right before my very eyes. And I said, this is like what I wanted to always be. Somebody who could just pull magic out of their fucking ass, and it was like when I was a kid, I used to want to do those things, but my friends would just stare at me. And if the old me could come back and talk to the young me, I would say, do you know why they treat you like that? Do you have any reason, do you have any inkling of why or how they treat you like that? And I would have said, no. I would have said, because you are a constant and painful reminder of something they will never, ever be able to do. And I said, my little self said, I'd hate me too.
Well, it's from what Burt Reynolds said. If Jonathan Winters needed 15 minutes to go to the corner store, it would take him 90 minutes because he would just constantly run into people and interact with them and then start riffing essentially. And I guess it's a blessing and a curse, but it did keep him grounded as somebody who, like you, struggled with substance abuse, and then he had to be institutionalized several times. And I'm sure he got material out of it, but he did have to make a conscious choice to go off into the straight into the work.
Yeah, he he was like all of them. I mean, like Sid Caesar had a real alcohol problem, and I'm sure they were taking the pills of the day, like Dexies and Bennies and whatever that stuff was. Uppers and downers to just keep you waking up in the morning and knocking you out at night so you could start all over again. And then the big tumblers of scotch after the live taping.
Yep.
No, there was no taping. What am I saying? It was live, period. End of sentence.
Yes. Yeah. And that is a special kind of talent considering what they have to work with now on TV. Multi-camera shots, you could re-edit, you could go back into the joke. Even the roasts now, they stop and edit the roast as opposed to what it used to be. But as I was saying earlier about WBCN and the Big Mattress, you were working with Charles Laquadera. From what I've read, the coke there flowed like water. Again, was he as bad off as he had admitted, or was he embellishing it all?
No, he wasn't. That was prime time. That was like when I got there, it was 1980. And the A&R guys, in the record business, they would show up, and they'd have the albums that they were pushing. It was like the soup of the day, try the soup. And meanwhile, in the albums, if you turned them to the side and emptied them out, there'd be little packets of cocaine that would fall down.
Absolutely.
And that's no lie. I mean, that's the way it was. And I got all involved with that stuff, except I didn't have any money. These other guys had money. I never made any money, I mean, and if I did, it was gone in 2 seconds.
So, it's in your opinion, was radio across the board infamously cheap with talent, except for the big Kahuna on the mic?
Yes. Yeah, it's that's kind of like standard fare
Hmm.
everywhere. It's like people said, "Well, how come you didn't go into TV comedy? How come you didn't get on a sitcom?" And like I was missing out or something for not doing that. And I
Right.
could care less. Number one, I don't give a fuck about celebrity. I
Hmm.
just don't. I never cared about. I don't give a shit about celebrity. And celebrities are not my heroes. My heroes are sculptors and painters and composers and frontline workers.
Yeah.
Those are my heroes. They're my celebrities. But this business about celebrity and wanting to be famous and all that, I never understood it. To me, it was always about what you can bring to the table.
Hmm.
So maybe that was a shortcoming, but I don't think so because on a sitcom, I got to the point where I could do 4 or 5 voiceover gigs in an 8-hour period rather than sit in a trailer for nearly 8 hours and come out and do an under 5
Hmm.
for scale.
Yeah. Well, it's this is next question is from one of my co-hosts from Brighton. Actually, you had moved out to California by the time Charles had moved to WZLX, and he was replaced by Howard over at WBCN.
Yes.
But he had, I think, 14 years on Howard as well. He was quite a bit older, and
Yes.
the way I read it, he understood that his time in the sun had passed. But I remember also in those days, it was pretty standard practice in the business to move one morning guy to make room for another so that there wouldn't be any obstacles for your guy to shine. Do you recall if Charles had any animosity about that shift?
I never got the sense of that because there was a period where we didn't talk. I left on bad terms from WBCN.
I
But
see.
many years later, we did talk and reconcile, and
Hmm.
and it's almost like if you've ever had these kind of fights with people, if 25 or 30 years goes by and you happen to email them or call them up or say hello, you're hard pressed to remember what the beef was about.
Right.
You're like, what was so goddamn important to me? What
Yeah.
was I, what was I hanging on to?
Hmm.
Destroying my own soul every time I thought about it, seething, and it's like, yeah, everybody learns. But I don't recall him having any big animosity. He went over to ZLX,
Hmm.
and I'm sure he was happy, and I'm sure they took care of him. Um, Me, I had to, I moved to New York when I left BCN,
Yeah.
and Mel Karmazin sort of arranged that. He knew that I wanted to come to New York, and I'd done everything I could do in Boston. I wasn't going to make another penny,
Yeah.
no matter how I ripped it up, or no matter how famous or whatever I became. I wasn't going to be able to pay a mortgage, that's for sure, let alone rent.
Hmm.
But when I moved to New York, um, I was pretty well received. I mean, even Howard was, you know, one said, I'll help you get acclimated. He was generous of spirit in that regard. Um, and then I started popping in and out of the show, but I was working in production,
Yeah.
and that was a drag. That was a real drag because you would think this was the best radio in the world. It's New York City, for Christ's sakes,
Sure.
and it was so mediocre. The overall picture of it was so goddamn mediocre. They were still doing this Lee Abrams rock block horse shit, classic rock.
Hmm.
Uh, we play 20 songs in a row, or you win $20,000. And it was to buy the ratings books and uh, all that stupid shit that radio had to do. You had
Yeah.
to pay people to listen to you. How about
Yeah.
putting on great entertainment? How about taking chances? How about letting talent and entertainers save your asses instead of research?
Hmm.
But they
Well,
couldn't. They couldn't get with it. They were scared of their own shadow.
the one of our fans has another question. Did you ever actually meet Ben Stern, Howard's dad? And if so, what was your opinion of him?
I did meet him very briefly.
Yeah.
I just thought he was just a nice enough old codger, really. Um,
Okay.
but I think he hadn't met me yet, and And he said to me when he met me, he says, God, I thought you were about 100 years old. He probably caught me, sounding like an old cantankerous crank or something. I don't know. I don't know what I did. I just had pull stuff out of my ass.
You told a story about I suppose it was near the end of your time at the Stern Show about Howard essentially asking you to cross the picket line. I can't remember if it was a strike situation or disregarding union rules for working more hours or something like that. And considering Ben Stern was a union guy, did it strike you as odd that Howard would ask this of you, knowing if you're in part of multiple unions?
I don't know. I knew that I wanted to. I needed to get more money for being on E. We were doing the radio show, but E brought in the cameras and everything.
Yes.
And he said, "Hey, did you cut your deal with E?" And I said, "No, it doesn't look too good. I don't think they're gonna do anything." And he says, "Yeah, because I can't show you. If you're not on E, and I want to because I know I'm going to get good stuff. But so." It was like a squeeze play, but I held out and I just said, sorry, can't help you. And then eventually something gave. But it was always that. It was always like I come in as an adult doing an adult job and I was getting paid little boy money no matter what I did.
Yep. And that's E. That's E's and this is not even having to do with K-Rock. They're the ones that were lowballing people. Jackie had the same issues.
Yeah. But just to use your imagination a little bit, I always fantasize about how someday, I'll be on a beach somewhere and Tom Chusano will be laying there. and I'll sit next to him with my towel and I'll go, Tom, let me ask you something. Was it worth it? But what? Did you save, $185 here and there? Was it worth it? I hope so.
Well, he was left high and dry by Howard in the end when Howard moved to satellites. So, and I don't know if he planned on stopping right then and there, but he was done at K-Rock afterwards. I don't think he had a job lined up. But both Jackie and Stuttering John had pretty poor opinions of the late Don Buckwald, who passed away not long ago. Did you ever have any interactions with Don? I know all agents in general are not particularly well-loved individuals, but what was your take on him?
Let's see. He when he was talking to me, he appeared to be very unassuming. And I said, I know how to do this too, because I used to play dumb all the time.
Right.
At the show and the radio station, I played dumb you can learn a lot by playing dumb.
Sure.
And, what's really talking about, Robin? So so I would talk to him. And one time he was, he wanted to sign me. And I went over to have a meeting with him and everything. And he says, yeah, we're going to build a new studio and you can do commercials with Howard. And I was like, well, whoopee. I'm thinking to myself, yeah, and then what?
Yeah.
I couldn't go for it because, I would have been, every move that would be planned for me in my career would be to stay in Howard's orbit. And that's it, period, end of sentence. And, so I just, all these things were adding up and they weren't really adding up. Nothing added up, nothing stacked up. And that's why I had to leave.
No kidding. And then that leads me into the next question. Actually, ironically, it's perfect timing. You discussed very recently you had a great story and great things to say about the late, great, and very talented Phil Hartman when you moved over to California. Can you talk to us about your relationship with him? Because I know that the Zap Brannigan character on Futurama was essentially his part before he passed away, and what a loss.
Him. Yeah, well, I did know him, and but how that came about was I was coming home from the Stern Show radio station, driving home to Westchester, and my wife called me and said, you know who just called here looking for you? I said, who? Phil Hartman, she said. And I started giggling. I said, do you know how many guys I know that could pull that prank on you? I knew about 4 guys that could call up and say, it's Phil Hartman. But myself included. But she said, no, it was him. He called from the set of News Radio, and he left his number, and he wanted you to call him. And I was like, geez, wonder what that's all about. And so I call him, and he said, I just called to tell you that I'm a fan of you, and
Wow.
I've been listening to you, and I think you're wonderful, but I think you should get out of there. You should move to Hollywood. That's what he said.
Well, he's
He said,
right.
and
I
if you
mean,
do, I'll help you. I'll help you. You know, meet people or get whatever it is you need. I'll help you. He was so generous of spirit. It was incredible. And and I actually did go out there, and we did an M&M's commercial together.
mhm.
And that's the last time I saw him. And then it's so funny. He, I remember I couldn't sleep one night, and my wife was, you know, antsy too, but I wasn't sure why. And she said, how can you stay in this place? What, this Hollywood? Yeah, all these people, these predators, and this one and that one. And I said, well, Jesus, you know, you got to find, there's good people everywhere. You just have to find them.
Yeah.
And she said, well, name one. And I said, okay. I said, Phil Hartman.
Right.
And I talked about him and everything. And do you know that maybe at that very hour, he was being dispatched by his wife?
Oh, just
Yeah, it
it's one of
happened
the
that evening when we were
Christ.
talking about the guy.
That's freaky.
Yeah, and so I just I was heartbroken. You know, everybody was.
Yeah.
But then a little later down the line on Futurama, they asked me if I would try doing that character. And what I did know about Phil, and I sort of always suspected it, is that he had a great love of old time big dumb radio announcers. I always called them
Sure.
big dumb announcers. You look at the guys that carry their balls in a wheelbarrow, and you know, yeah, it's 5 minutes past the big hour 6, and yeah, we got another thing coming to the other side for you. Yeah. Here with 101, Johnny Band and the Human Cannon saying what's in you has got to come out, and that's what rock and roll is all about. Yeah. But I mean, I used to say to myself, who talks like this? And you know, I mean, I could do it, but I just thought it was goofy. You know, it felt like a goober if you were going to do that for a living, and I could never do it seriously. So that's what Zap Brannigan was. But the things that Phil did were indicative that he had listened to a lot of those guys, and so we kind of we were cut from the same cloth in a way. When they asked me to do that, that's what I did, and I added the addendums at the end of a word, because those guys, they couldn't give birth to a word. Their voice was so precious. They thought so high. They thought so highly of their own voices that they wouldn't let them go sometimes. You know? Carry their balls in a wheelbarrow, and they'd be like, you know, they would just like, you know what you and I need? I mean, really need. Have a good cup of coffee in the morning. Except you don't want that caffeine rush. Yeah. You know that it was the hamburger helper of verbiage.
Yes.
That and that you know.
There's always a little by the way at the end. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's not recently, but I'm going to say, I don't know, in the last 10 years, when Al Davis passed away, on the live broadcast, you could hear the announcer coming straight out of the, straight out of the Ernie Anderson School of Diction. And he said, ladies and gentlemen, please join me for a moment of silence for the legendary Al Davis, who died yesterday. Complete tone deaf, you know, as opposed to what you should know to be a human when you're doing this. And in radio, I guess there was a template, and there was a cookie cutter way of doing things that a lot of people just followed to over the cliff.
Well, there was still old timers floating around, and they probably just stuck a piece of copy in front of him. You know, he probably was barely there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and but those guys. You know, I mean, I used to listen to everything that those guys did. I mean, I thought they were fun because of the clownishness of it, that they took themselves so seriously, and that therein lied the comedy of it. You know, I'd listen to bloopers even. It's like, let's conclude. That is all.
Perfect. Rather than talk about, first of all, there's a question you constantly get asked. I've noticed this because I scanned a lot of your interviews. People always ask, "What's your favorite character's voice?" And let's avoid that. And instead, maybe if you could discuss some parts that you or jobs that you turned down and the reasons for doing so.
Well, I mean, I can start out by doing the greatest hits, and then talk about stuff that just was not going to happen. Like when I first worked for Nickelodeon, I did two of the Nicktoons. I got hired for two of them. I went out and auditioned hundreds and hundreds of people, and I got it was my cassette demo that sold Ren and Stimpy to Nickelodeon. The guy that created the show had me record both voices. This was in a closet up the hall from where he was going to go meet with the women at Nickelodeon.
Right.
And, and I'm in the closet. And it was right out of the movies, It's got this piece of paper, and like this, and microphone on a broomstick, and, real Turner Classic movie stuff. And he goes up and he comes out of the meeting and he says, "Hey, congratulations, what you did helped sell the show." And I said, "Oh, great." But he decided he wanted to do this Ren voice, and I didn't give a fat frog's ass who did what, because I had a job. I was thrilled. I was going to do voices for what? Cartoons? Are you kidding me? This is really what I wanted to do. So I didn't care who did what. And then he got himself fired from the show.
Yeah.
So they asked me, they talked and they said, "Wasn't Billy supposed to do both voices?" And they said, "Yeah, we'll ask him." And excuse me, I did both, and it was like, big brain dead cat, happy, joy, joy.
Yeah.
And will you shut up, you fool? I'll kill you. You idiot. Yeah. And it was like a quintessential asshole.
Yeah.
And and I did some other incidentals on the show. I did these screaming sci-fi announcers, and that was me making fun of those big dumb announcers again. And I emphasized all the wrong words,
Right.
which just made everybody tickled. They giggled over that, and it was a thing. It was something you could, hang your coat on. It was a staple. And so then on the other Nicktoons, it was this kid Doug, who was
Doug.
Yeah, he was a painfully shy 11-and-a-half-year-old, and this is my dog Pork Chop. And then there was no, it ain't, you lying loser. This bully Roger, and he was based on a real kid that bedeviled me when I was in school in Detroit, and they always wound up dead or in jail, as we come to find out as we become venerable. Hey, whatever happened to he died when he was 30. And
big surprise.
Yeah, big surprise. Or become cops.
Irish. It's going to go one way or the other, I suppose. Everybody's seen The Departed.
I guess, but I was going to say that they're 30 years older now, because I did that stuff 30 years ago. So when kids come up and they ask about it, and even adults that I raised, I've got adults that are in their 40s that I raised, and then there's their kids that are in their 20s, and then those kids have little 4-year-olds, and and it's like the old geezers, like, "I used to listen to you on Stern. You were bad. You guys were bad." Yeah, you guys, and the guy would be an old geezer like me, and then there'd be like a little 4-year-old girl who was nonverbal, and the parents would say, "She's very shy, but she wants to say hi to Doug," and so I would do it, and I would indulge her, and I'd do the little delicate voice, and the little girl goes, "He sounds like Doug, but he sounds like an old man doing Doug." and I just laughed. I laughed my balls off. So then I did a dog and pony show for the adults. I said, "They're 30 years older now, so you never know how they're going to turn out." And dear Journal, today I blew up a courthouse. See him in court.
Yeah.
Handcuffs on, and it's Judge Roger Klotz. "Put it in court. Put it." "Oh, look who it is. It's Funny, you loser. I knew I was going to see you in here one day, Funny." "Oh, yeah, Funny. You're going to jail. You're going to be somebody's bitch in jail, Funny."
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
I ruined so many childhoods. The people that were waiting in line were like going, "Oh no."
Well, the beauty of having done such a vast swath of projects is, I guess one of the things is you don't have to be constantly telling people, yeah, thank you for loving me on Gilligan's Island. I've been in other things too,
Oh, right.
you know,
Yeah.
right. You don't have to get pigeonholed. And one of the massive trends in Hollywood is to stick with familiarity when it comes to hiring voice actors. So instead they offer, instead of someone who's got talent for voice adaptation, they offer Bradley Cooper money just to sound like Bradley Cooper in the latest Pixar thing.
Yeah.
Can you think of any situation in which this approach actually creatively worked for you, where you thought, yeah, this person should be doing a voice? You don't even know that it's Ed Asner. It just works.
Yes, it does work. That trend always bothered me, and I was one of the first ones to speak out about it. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
you're not supposed to do that. And I said, I said, letting these people, inviting them into the tent to do something that we as artisans and craftsmen based our whole lives on being able to do, not just one voice, but multiple voices.
Yes.
Litanies of characters and motives and ranges and all this and that, and you were really proud of it. And then in comes some schmo, some schlub celebrity,
Mm-hmm.
and the bar falls back on the ground. And then they're like, where's my $20 million? And so I started just, complaining about it. I said, it's like hiring them is like sending a bunch of highly skilled plumbers to go win the World Series for you. I mean, they're real good at what they do, but they don't belong in fucking Fenway Park.
Yeah. Well, the only time I could think of where it probably would have worked in this case was Chris Farley, who was the original. He was slated to do the first Shrek before Mike Myers took it on, and Chris, being so vulnerable as a comic actor, and was about to start doing. He had, before he passed away, he was meeting with David Mamet to do a biopic as Fatty Arbuckle.
Oh, right.
And I think it would have been fantastic, and he could have done voice work as well later on because he had such highs and lows. He was almost like Richard Harris. But either way, I hope some of this gets addressed in something that you're promoting. Well, you will promote. You've got a book coming out next year. Is there anything you can tell us about it before it's released?
Well, no one wants to read about how great your life is going and how much money you make or how successful you are. It's silly, it's pointless. So I just put the whole nitty gritty. My whole childhood goes in there and what led to what to wind up, to add up to what it is that I wound up doing. Comedy always came from great pain and tragedy. I think that you mentioned, if there's a case where a celebrity fit the bill as a voice, Katie Seagal, I wanted to get that in.
Love Katie.
She was perfect, and that was Matt Groening's call. And he, people ask me what it's like to create characters, and I didn't create shit. I just did voices for stuff. But Matt Groening has created over 1,000 characters.
Yeah.
I have no words of superlative statement to describe him. It's just like it's unbelievable what he can do, and it's an honor to be working with him. But as far as celebrities doing stuff, yeah, maybe we'll have them come in and do a stunt role, but we try to get like the odder ones. Like we had Coolio, and we had Lucy Liu, and one time we brought Pam Anderson in to play her own head in a jar, and I was sitting next to her. And she had, like, there were security people, Miss Anderson's coming in the building, and and she was sitting next to me, and and I said, I leaned in and I went, I don't know if you know this, Miss Anderson, but there's this tape going around.
Shit. I hope she was cool with it.
Yeah,
I know
she was married to Tommy Lee. I mean, I figured, if anybody could, but I Tourette out stuff. I don't have a filter or a governor, and I've gotten better at it over the years. But it's like I was fearless. I was always fearless. I just didn't, Anything for a laugh. It was like, putting your head in the lion's mouth and see if anybody laughs.
Consequently, when you were doing radio, and I wanted, there's a two-part question. Was it, how much of it was just off the top of your head stuff, and how much of it was written? I mean, obviously, when you're recording bits for future use, that's a different story. But on the fly, like at the Stern Show and with Charles, was it what would be the ratio of improv versus stuff that was written out?
The early improv stuff that I did in Boston, I just would just let it fly. But I did write a few things, a few landmarks to hit on here and there. But if you're talking for 15 minutes in character, nobody can write stuff for you that fast. If you're saying one thing after another, nobody can write everything that you say. And no one can keep up with you. What they can do is, like a Jackie Martling, is just put down the most brilliant one-liner so that you can put a button on some circling holding pattern that you were in character, bullshitting around. And and I, it was not a question of me just soloing my ass off all the time. I was aided and abetted, particularly by Jackie.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, 5 minutes is a long time to talk.
Oh, yeah.
And you better have stuff to say, and in that regard, you better be funny.
Yep.
And so I would just basically say anything for a laugh. I would, I would just say something totally outrageous and laugh, or there's a thing that I started doing. I didn't do it on the show, but I wound up doing it later on. It's like after somebody reported some news thing that was the most awful thing in the world, they used to have Jackie laughing, cackling at it.
Yeah, I love
but that was recorded. It wasn't him doing it.
Right.
So then I thought, okay, so if I tell a joke about something really hideous that just happened, and people look at you, and I go, what, too late? Everything happens at light speed,
Well, yeah, to the detriment sometimes of getting fines, and you had no idea that was coming, but that's going to the station, of course. Hopefully not to you. Hopefully nothing got filtered out that Billy's on Hawk for making fun of Lucy when she's on her deathbed.
No, they wanted me to sign an agreement that would make me responsible for anything I said should the FCC fine them.
Wow.
Yeah, that was another reason why I left.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, every day. Did you sign that paper? Did you sign that paper?
Because Howard legendarily claimed he was fined, but it was always the station that was fined, and he never had to pay a nickel.
Yeah, I don't think he paid anything.
No way.
No. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, right.
He had buffer zones. He had a super agent and then lawyers, and I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is they wanted me to sign, so I would be personally responsible for anything that they got fined for that I said. And
Christ Almighty.
And I just, he's like, "Did you sign that paper?" And one day he came in, and I just said, "You didn't see it on your desk?" I signed the paper and I put it on your desk, for Christ's sakes. He said, "I didn't see it." Well, I put it there. Why would I tell you that I did if I didn't? I mean, and I said to myself, if these fucking guys can lie to you, bald face, just look you right in the eye and lie to you, I can do the same thing.
Sure, why not?
So he let up, he figured, Billy probably talked to his lawyer, and that's the end of this. Ed Daggio. Yeah,
absolutely. Good on you. That's smart play. I've got a couple Pepsi challenge type questions for you. There's no wrong answer. Just choose the one or the other. Okay. First one, the Flintstones or the Honeymooners?
The Honeymooners.
Okay. RFK Jr. or KFC?
Were derivative of the Honeymooners.
Absolutely. RFK Jr. or KFC?
Oh, God. Well, it's funny that you should say that, because if you look closely at RFK Jr., he looks like a piece of KFC. He looks like a burnt baked good or burnt bacon with blue eyes.
Double down.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, it's just, he's unwatchable. I can't even look at him.
and
got those dead
unlistenable.
elephant eyes, you know.
That voice of his makes Marlon Brando in The Godfather sound like I don't know, like Peter O'Toole. It's just
You know, he's like,
looks
you know,
painful.
I cut off a dead whale's head once. So what? Does that make me a bad man? You know?
Knowing your love of guitars and playing guitar, vintage Gibson Gold Top or a Gibson Gold Top from AliExpress.
Oh, the vintage gold top, because I had one.
Oh my God! And you sold
I
it?
had a flame top. I had a 1959 Sunburst flame top back in the
Holy
70s.
holy shit!
Yeah, that guitar right now is worth $2 million.
Easily.
Yeah, but I don't have it, so, you know.
Jerry Lewis or Jerry Seinfeld?
Jerry Lewis.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
met Jerry Lewis. Me and Tom Kenny, SpongeBob.
Yep.
And Tom Kane, voiceover actor that was on the Powerpuff Girls. Tom got in touch with Jerry's people. Jerry was playing at the Hotel Orleans in Las Vegas. And he was going to do a stage show, and we got ourselves invited. You know, he set it up. Jerry will meet you guys because he has a little daughter that's 8 years old, and she watches Nickelodeon, and she would know all of our stuff. That's what got us in.
What was this? What year would this have been?
Let's see.
95?
No, maybe like 2002.
Holy Christ! Okay.
Yeah, so he was, you know, he was amenable. They said, you know, the Nickelodeon guys want to come and see you, and he was like, "Who are they? What's that?" And then they said, "Well, your little girl would know who they were," and so that's what got us in. And I saw him. I told him that Jerry, I walked for almost 7 miles to go see you when I was 10 years old to the Royal Theater in Royal Oak, Michigan. And you were doing a live stage show to promote The Nutty Professor. And I said, I walked and I just had to come and see you. And he goes, boy, was I whoring for that picture. Yeah, and we talked about addiction, you know, and I said, Jesus, you know, I want you to know, and I'm sure maybe you have a sense of this, but everybody that loved you was rooting for you to get out of trouble, to pull out of the drug addiction and all that. You know, we all knew about it and everything.
Yeah.
And, but it's just glad to see that you got out of it. And I said, I went the same way myself, and I was, by the grace of God, I was kind of pulled out of the nosedive. And he said, I was hooked on painkillers for 35 years.
Yep.
And what happened was he was doing a bit in a bar, at a piano bar. And he got on the piano and he was screwing around, and he jumped off the piano and landed, and I think he chipped his back, one of the bones in his back.
Yeah.
And he said, and so right after that, I was hooked on Percodans for 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, but I got the laugh.
Christ almighty. That's some way to go.
Laugh.
Yeah,
he
absolutely
I got the laugh.
Yeah. Two more, Ginger or Marianne?
Oh, Ginger, I guess. I love trouble. I love trouble, you know.
Interesting. Alan Young or Neil Young?
Alan Young.
Oh, very good. Okay. You and I share a common, I'll say interest, because that's the nice way of putting it, about regarding Aubrey Plaza. There's something about her that's eminently watchable. And there's a sexiness, but there's also some kind of mischief. She's always got this impish look on her face that I'm drawn to.
I am too. I told you I love trouble. One time I was doing a cartoon and I was sitting next to Cree Summer, voice actors. She's the green M&M, but she's done a million things. And she's reading a fashion magazine, and there's a fold out, and I could only see the folded page, and it was this exotic looking woman with a veil here and this Arabic eye makeup.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking, and she unfolds it, and the woman is pointing a gun at you with Mendy tattoos on. And I said, my dream girl. I mean, I love trouble. I'm attracted to trouble. But Aubrey Plaza is feral.
Yes.
There's something feral about her.
Yeah. It's primal. I mean, there's good looking and there's gorgeous and then there's sexy, and sexy is not necessarily perfect and flawless. Yeah,
but I mean, there's something about her that is I don't know. It's kind of otherworldly. And then maybe who knows what kind of a person she is, but maybe she would throw her body over yours as you were being shot at. I mean, when people like that are weird, they go weird all the way.
I think so too. Right, really quickly, I'm just going to play brief bits of old bits that I just want to know where the impetus came from. The first one is you were doing Jane Curtin on the Stern Show, and I can't actually believe it because no one does Jane Curtin except maybe your husband.
Well, I mean, it was a one-shot deal, and we just used that as a word because she starred in a movie about the Boston busing.
Okay.
And it was a racial divide about whether kids were going to come from Roxbury to go to school in Roslindale, and you know what I mean. And there was a backlash, and it was all these angry Irish women. We don't want no busing, and. Them people stick to your own, and Howard saw me riffing with it, and he said, just be Jane Curtin, and just come in and say all that shit. And then eventually it became Marge Schott.
If I'm not mistaken, she's from Boston as well.
No. Marge Schott was Cincinnati.
Oh, no. Jane Curtin.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe she was. I don't know.
Unless she was maybe she went to school in Boston. I'm mistaking that. But either way, let me just play a little of this.
By the way, on our phone line, Robin, before we get to the news, I do have Jane Curtin with us.
Yes, the wonderful actors, both from Saturday Night Live and Kate E. Alley.
Yeah, Kate and Alley. Jane?
Good morning, Howard.
How are you? And thank you.
Hello, Robin.
Good morning.
I just wanted to say I watched that TV show last night with you in it.
Oh, that was part 2.
Yeah, part 2.
Which Common Ground.
Right, Common Ground. Did you see it?
I didn't see it, but I've heard a lot about it.
Well, you know what it was about.
Jane played, listen to this, Jane played one of those Bostonian women.
She was Alice McGough.
Right.
A working-class Irish-American widow with 7 children who becomes an impassioned foe of the desegregation that was going on in Boston at the time, Robin.
Right.
It was Judge Garrity's forced busing decision.
I won't play the whole thing because it's stellar. But did you ever?
It sounds to me that sounds like Phil Hendry.
There's a hint of it, absolutely. Did you ever, for all these impressions, did you ever actually encounter one of the subjects of your impressions and they responded unfavorably?
Not entirely unfavorably, but one time the sports announcer Al Michaels came in, and I sat there and I was just saying stuff. I was just treading out stuff as Al Michaels, but saying stuff that it was like, it was just so weird, stuff that would get him in trouble if he was ever overheard talking like that. And you couldn't tell who was who at one point, Just like he was astonished by it. He was like nerved out, but I think he sort of liked it. But he said, Billy West makes me sound like a generic baseball announcer.
Well, there's loads of encounters of people that like certain Dave Thomas met actually Richard Harris and he did whatever he could to get away from him. Actually, he didn't like it, but his Bob Hope was legendary, probably the best in the business.
Yes.
But there were times also where you'd like to throw in the music, where you were able to tie in the music and the impressions as well. So this was you and John DiMaggio over in at the Vanguard, just playing, doing the theme from Shaft. Let me play a little of this.
Who's the black private dick who gets all the tips? You're damn right.
I can't believe. Did that just come out? That wasn't scripted, was it?
No.
God. That was something
No,
else.
and I think I had John pinch my nose while I played guitar so I could do Joe Walsh.
Yes.
And I was singing Rocky Mountain Way, but I was doing it as that, that pinch nose thing. How you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
none
It
of
was.
that. That just happens. It's like, and then there's always like managerial types that think they can co-opt that stuff,
Yeah.
and put it to work for them. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't. Just got a few more questions, and I'll let you go because I know I don't want to keep you up too late. The sometime between '93 and before you left the Stern Show, you appeared on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. Actually, and
Yes.
it was a great appearance, and I presume it was just to promote Ren and Stimpy, but or they just invited you. I have no idea, because sometimes Jay would have those things where no one's got anything to plug. You just want a guest because you find them interesting. But
He did invite me.
at one point, you mentioned aloud you were going to do an impression of Howard, and you did. You nailed his complete talentlessness on talk shows, because you managed to do the one thing, the elusive thing he's not managed to do, which was find a laugh. And you said aloud, "He's going to hate this." My question was, did he? Did it get back to him?
I don't know. He's not. I don't know if he did or not. I don't think he did. But they were just putting down my appearance, like, how could you, didn't you realize that you sucked, and all that. They're putting words in my mouth, and
Oh my God.
and I just, he had no idea that I went through the worst things that a human being could go through in the first 10 years of my life.
Yeah.
Him saying that I sucked on TV, it was like, yeah, then what happened,
Yeah. Right. I mean, in front of a live audience, you can't. Now, I suppose you could AI laughs, but that was purely organic. It was just, to me, I hate, without trying to wax poetic, it was no different than the first time Drew Carey did the Tonight Show, or someone getting like legit laughs and the host just tickled pink. And Jay, I'm assuming Jay treated you like a mensch.
Yeah, he did. I
Yeah.
started to do an impression of him, but he kind of shot me a look. Like, in other words, don't do that.
This is another question from the fans. Did you ever detect any animosity from Fred while working there? Because without sounding, again, too effusive with praise, there was a massive gap in quality when it came to your impressions and anyone else's on the show. Howard had to go to the megaphone and without fail, and his voices were awful. Fred did some passable impressions, but did that bleed into any kind of interactions, or was he very professional?
He was very professional. I never really, to be honest with you, I don't recall any animosity. I think he was trying to be helpful in the role that he was assigned on that show.
Mm-hmm.
And he would also lob in little ideas and things like that. And for bits, especially like recorded bits, he wrote a lot of stuff, and he was very talented. As far as I was concerned, I didn't have an ego. I mean, I thought, if I'm doing an impression and then Fred jumps in and he's doing the same impression, I used to think, this is fucking crazy. The more the merrier. Who cares,
Yeah. The most QF fans believe that Howard and Ralph, who's also just passed a while back, had a Liberace Scott Thorson relationship, which is why Ralph was able to get away with so much. But will there be a section in the book devoted to how much of a dickhead he was?
Yeah, I mentioned something that he pulled on me one time, and I kind of never got over it, really.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll have to wait and read about it.
I can't wait to do it, actually. This is another question regarding the cons. What are the oddest and coolest items you've ever had to sign at a convention?
Well, the days of signing somebody's leg and then them coming back the next time you come to town and they show you that they made a tattoo of it.
Sure.
The novelty of that, I mean, it's like lots of people do that. I've signed people's legs and arms, and, it doesn't matter. But the weirdest thing that I ever had to sign, oh, gosh. Every day at those shows, every time you go, it's like, let's make a deal.
Yeah.
Because people are cosplaying left and right. And I think it's the most wonderful thing in the world.
It's great.
I'm hard pressed to think of what was the weirdest or the greatest thing. But I can tell you, I have theories about autism because I was on the spectrum. And so I get it. Most people at the shows are on the spectrum. But I have to tell you that there isn't a narcissist within 100 miles of one of those fucking places. There's no toxic masculinity. There's no misogyny. Everybody's an empath. Big fuck, they're awkward, but they have gifts. They're compassionate. All these qualities that we're starting to lose as a human race.
Yeah.
I mean, people, I'm on a flight and two full-grown men decide to have a fist fight at 32,000 feet. And I sit there and I go, where are these freaks coming from? Where are these fucking people? I mean, and wanting to kill each other over a parking space or a candy bar wrapper, or and so I learned from watching the conventions that there's this, and it's documented. There's an explosion of autistic births, and they can't explain it. And so some jerk was on TV going, well, it's because mothers took Tylenol. And no, shut up. No. And I said, I know what it is. And what I think it is nature making an intervention, a correction.
Interesting. Yeah.
Nature has to make a correction when we're in trouble, because we're going to cancel each other out at the rate we're going. And there's people that are so stupid they don't know they're stupid, which is Dunning-Kruger.
Yep.
And so nature, we look the other way. We'll normalize anything. But nature will not look the other way because it has to make a correction, has to make an intervention. And it happens with evolution. We have to evolve in some direction. And I think that's what autism is, because I think when it becomes more mainstream, like 150 years from now, it's going to bring society up instead of down. I have to believe that, because when there's people going to Yellowstone National Park and there's some guy wants to do the Macarena with a buffalo, and he gets killed, Mother Nature's up on the hill going, looking at us like, I had to take him out. I had to. I don't want that shit in the gene pool. And the guy doing the video is next because he's almost as stupid.
Well, it's two more questions, actually. One of them has to do with without naming any names.
Yes.
Can you tell any obnoxious diva type stories from the cons that people that might have acted a little above their station or just a little hoity-toity with the fans and stuff, or people who are legendarily without, if their names rhyme with Killian Ganderson or I don't know. There are threads about it based in Reddit, all over Twitter. There's loads of them like that. And
really?
but I mean,
typically how many are on me? I'm always nice to everybody.
Right.
I'm really nice to everybody. I don't know. I remember one time, and I won't mention names, but there was some sci-fi show that had aged, over the years. It was on TV for probably 15 years or something. And one of the women that was one of the elder statesmen on the show was getting pissy because there was a guest that just was briefly on the show and now going out doing Comic-Cons. And she was, and I just thought it was funny. It's like, just be grateful, for God's sakes. It's like someone paid for you to come to a show in Pittsburgh, and you just got to sit there and just be congenial and sign your name for people. What the hell? And even Bill Shatner likes doing it. And I've talked to him. I've been in the green room and we've sat there and chatted, and he's very funny. He's like, what is he, over 95 now or something?
He's definitely early 90s for certain.
Well, he I think what keeps him alive is he's always got a mission. He always has a destination, whether it's 30 seconds away or 30 days away. He had, I think that's what keeps him going, is one little goal after another. Like he'll just sit there and he's talking to you and go, I'm going to get a cookie. And he'll go over to the green room snack counter, and he'll grab a cookie, and then I'm going to get another cookie. I mean, and then I'm going to use the restroom. I'm going to use the men's room. And I'll be right back. But he always had to have like an immediate destination. And I swear, when you're that age, what else are you going to think about? Like, maybe I won't even make it out of the bathroom.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know I'd be thinking like that.
Yeah, I think with Futurama now, just the news came out. Now it's well into I think the new episodes are out. It seemingly has an end in sight, but do you think it may continue beyond the new episodes?
We have 2 more seasons to go.
Perfect.
Yeah, I know what I'll be doing till I'm 75.
Great.
I was ready to, Jim. I was ready to say goodbye. I was like, I got nothing to prove,
Yeah.
I was, I should have retired like 10 years ago, but I didn't. And because I kept working, I never stopped working in 40 years or 42 years. I never wasn't without work. I always was doing something and very fortunate, very lucky. Gratitude. Me and Tom Kenny talk about that all the time. It's like, we're 2 urchins that get really lucky because we had some freak talent, but that isn't always a guarantee. Business of 95% unemployment and your job is looking for work.
Yeah.
If you can get over that part of it, things are hunky dory. But I was gonna say, you asked me. What did you just ask me?
Just about Futurama. Like, do you think beyond the new episodes
yeah.
or schedule, do you think there's a possibility it could continue anyway?
I think so. I mean, if I had nothing to do with the show, I would have been a fan of it because of the writing. These guys they just, in their own little way, they reinvent comedy all the time. And that's what keeps me coming back to the table. I mean, that I think it's the greatest thing I ever did. I think that it's the same cast, and every time we're not on the air and then we come back and everything, it's like we never left. We're just taking the same seats in the studio and just going at it. And I'm honored to be working on that show. I love it. I love it. And I do a few other shows. There's a Disney thing I'm doing. I don't know if you have kids, but they probably watch this show, Big City Greens. And I play a reoccurring role on there. And I'm still doing commercials, M&Ms.
Well, perfect. I'm glad you're keeping yourself busy because, as you said, that keeps people going and it gives them a reason to just get out of bed. And I think that does have some practical health benefit. Just keeping yourself moving all the time. My mother-in-law is the same way. She's pushing 83 or something, and my mother's similar age, and she's just go, go, go. And I think that's her. That's her metabolism.
I need some vanilla extract.
Yeah,
I'll be right back.
Perfect. Thank you so much for appearing on the show. Love you, and I'm really gonna, as soon as that book has some kind of release date, please let us all know, and I'll plug it like crazy.
Yeah, feel free to call me and we can chat and stuff. I enjoy it, and I have listened to your podcast and I enjoy it. I think radio is just deader than a doornail, so I'm glad that people are doing podcasts.
God bless you. I want you to take care of yourself, stay healthy, stay happy, and thank you so much once again, and we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks, Jim.
Have a good one.
Okay, you too.
Johnny was going to call in with the
later, man. Good, thanks for calling.
All right, Eric.
Announcement.
Take care, buddy.
He sprained his ankle.
Yeah, we'll see you.
Hey, Eric, I got to run along.
Take care, buddy.
All right, thanks, Eric.
Oh, wait.
Go fuck yourself.
Anyone looking to go to any concerts this summer?
No.
Check out. Get pre-sale.
No one wants to go. We'll see you, buddy.
Red Rock.
Bye.
Hank, you're on the air.
Hey now, Howard. Howard.